We're going to get into our study again on the topic of identity. Today is actually the last one, and I thought we had a hum or maybe a ring or something. I don't know. Maybe if Grayson comes back in, he could check that out. I thought a guitar was going to do that whoa, whoa, whoa thing. I did, to get started, I did find something humorous before we get into the identity stuff. And I found a joke about this pastor that was teaching through a sermon series on various sins from the Bible. And at the end of one of his sermons, he told his congregation that in preparation for next week's sermon, I want to challenge everyone to go home and read Mark chapter 17. I want you to read that chapter and prepare. It will help you to be ready for the sermon next week. So the following Sunday, they all came in. They gathered for the song service and prayer and all the things that they normally do. And then the pastor gets up to deliver his sermon. And before he did, he asked for a show of hands. He wanted to know how many of them actually went home and did the homework. How many of you went home and read Mark chapter 17? Well, a few hands went up. Pretty soon the whole room, every hand in the room had gone up. And the minister smiled a little bit, and he says, well, thank you, everyone, for your response to this assignment. But I need to tell you that the book of Mark only has 16 chapters. And since today's sermon is on the sin of lying, I think we had better get started. All right. So we've been going through this series on identity, and just a rather brief overview of where we've been. As we've talked about, just trying to do a 40-day journey, a 40-day walk, a 40-day encounter with God that would help remind us of the identity that He gives to us. The identity that He says who we are. That God says that we are His children. God says that we are beloved. God says that we are royal. God says we are a part of a priesthood. God says that we are His family. God says that we are friends. God says that He's our Lord. God says that He wants to use us for great and mighty things. These are things that we don't always think about ourselves, and so we trust what God says about us. Because we have an identity that's been given to us by Him, and we listen to His word, and we listen to what He says about who we are. And so we've been talking about identity, and in this journey, we've kind of looked at a few things, and we had to first recognize, we had to accept the fact that when sin entered the world, our identity was broken. It was lost. It was broken. We had that separation from God. And what happened is after that was broken, we lost that identity of what God says about us, because there was a time when God walked amongst His children freely, openly, welcomely. But when that was broken and we were separated from Him, what happened? We became aware of right and wrong. We became aware of sin. And what replaced the identity that God gave us when it got broken was that identity turned to shame. And suddenly we're living with shame, failure, fear, worry, doubt. We're starting to live a life wondering who we are. God says this is who you are, but suddenly because it got broken, we're wondering, who are we? What do I need to do? And ever since, we've tried to overcome that identity of shame with other things, superficial things, worldly things. But the good news is that through Jesus Christ, our identity was restored. It was set back. It was put into the right place again. We are reconciled with God because of what Jesus Christ did on the cross. And we can again step into that identity. We can again remind ourselves of who we are. It is such a privilege to live on this side of the cross. We don't understand it because we never really had to be on the other side, and maybe we take it a little bit for granted. We have such a privilege to stand in the forgiveness of sin and the reestablishment of our identity as God gets to say who we are. But we still struggle in that area, and so we needed to recognize that our identity can grow. It has to build and develop. I could stand here and tell you these things. I can tell you that you're beloved and that God loves you and He's proud of you and He's excited for you, and you don't have to do anything. You can't do anything to make Him love you more. You can't do anything to earn His approval. But we doubt that sometimes. We struggle with that at times. We still try to develop and build our own identity through our efforts and our works and our accomplishments. And so we need to let that identity grow. And that's been the kind of the reason for this particular 40-day journey, to let God build into us as we're reading His Word, as we're praying, as we're hearing, hopefully, these messages, as we're worshiping, as we're thanking Him, as we're connecting with each other, that God just, every time we visit with Him, He builds our identity a little bit more. Then last week we said that our identity brings authority. And that there are two things, we didn't deal with this one a lot, but we did say there are two things that God gave us at creation. He said, I'm going to tell you who you are, and I'm going to tell you what I want you to do. He says He gave us identity, and then He gave us responsibility. And it says that we can represent Him in the world. We can stand and say that I am a light for Jesus Christ. We can do it confidently. We can do that proudly. We can do that effectively and make an impact in the world around us when we stand in authority about what God says, when we stand there because of what God says about who we are. So it's a question of God says who we are and God says what we can do. And then today, I want to let you know, as we kind of wrap this up, today's the last one on this identity, and next week we're going to, again, summarize a bit, but around the Easter message. And so today I just want to tell you that our identity brings peace. And I hope that that's some good news to you. Wouldn't you like to have a little peace? Every morning when you're watching the news, wouldn't you like a little peace? Every day as you're trying to make it through, wouldn't you like a little peace? As we grow in the security of this new identity, it's God's desire and design to help us to then bring peace into our lives, because we live in a oftentimes perhaps, chaotic world. And how we need God's peace today. If peace is a state of tranquility or quietness of spirit that transcends your circumstances, then we recognize that we have circumstances all around us that threaten our peace. But the question is, does it threaten your peace or does it remove your peace? Do the issues, the chaos, the crises, the problems, the situations that you deal with in your little world or in the grander scheme of the world around us, are you able to hang on to your peace? Because our world is full of all kinds of opportunities to lose that sense of calm, that sense of faith, that sense of security. Stress, fear, worry, pain, being mistreated. There are all kinds of external stressors that pound against our lives. And then we've battled constantly with the internal stressors when we struggle with identity. When we're still struggling with that question of who am I? We have economic worries. We have political divisions. There's safety concerns. There's community problems to deal with. We fight at work. We fight on the roadways. We fight on the sidelines of the Little League football game. I mean, it's just a battle to get through every single day sometimes. So I have a little test for you. Think about some of that stuff. You know, where are your relationships at? Where is your job at? Where is your your connection into your neighborhood? What groups are you a part of? How are you doing in the area of health, or how are you doing in the area of money and bills? How secure do you feel right now in the world as we just see it changing before our eyes? Where is your stress level? Where is your worry level? Where is your level of concern? Well, I found a little test. I found some questions, and they're going to come up here, but just ask these questions. And this is just a little bit of a self-awareness piece that asks, how am I doing in my stress level? Do I have a lot of stress in my life? And is it starting to overflow into how I'm living? Are there signs that my peace is under attack? So here's some questions. Number one, do you feel, or do you tire more easily? Do you feel fatigued more than energized? Now, I would answer that probably different if I was 20 than now I'm turning 50. So I'm going to give a certain allowance, but how about that? Number two, are people annoying you by telling you you don't look good lately? Have you ever had somebody say that to you? And you just want to sock them. But because you know it's true. Are you working harder and harder and accomplishing less and less? Number four, are you growing increasingly cynical and disenchanted? Is that an indication? Are you often invaded by a sadness that you can't explain? Number six, this one was kind of funny. Are you forgetting things? Appointments, deadlines, personal possessions? I forgot to pick up my grandson from school this week. I was late and I had to call the school who had already called mommy. Oh, and I was in big trouble. I still owe somebody ice cream. I wasn't late for this appointment, but they got here before me, and they said, we're here, and I texted them right back. I said, okay, I'm at the house. I'm looking for my keys. I've been looking for my keys for the last 15 minutes. I couldn't find my keys to get in the office. Well, because I conveniently hid them in my pocket. So, hey, but is your forgetfulness, is it an indicator of overwhelmed and overburdened, right? Number seven, are you increasingly irritable, short-tempered, more disappointed in the people around you? Is something growing there that you recognize? Number eight, are you seeing close friends and family members less frequently? You may be beginning to withdraw because you just can't handle things very well or something. Are you busy? Too busy to do routine things like make phone calls, read reports, or just sit and read? Do you feel like you're so busy all the time, there's just so much to do, and you just have that sense of being overwhelmed that the daily routine things that should be done, need to be done, just become so irritating? And you don't do them even well? Is that an indication? Number 10, are you suffering from physical complaints? Muscle aches, pain, headaches, lingering colds, and sickness. These are indications that their stress level has gotten so high. We can carry our stress in headaches and physical ailments and getting sick. I wonder if getting sick isn't sometimes God's way of just slowing us down and saying you've got to take a break. Do you feel disoriented when the activity of the day comes to a halt? Sometimes when, like if I'm trying to take a day off, and I'm sitting, I'm like antsy. I feel like I should be doing something. I lose myself. Well, I'm being unproductive. My list is still so long. Is that an indication of your stress level? Is joy elusive? Are you unable to laugh at a joke about yourself? Possibly getting just too defensive. I think this is the last one. Do you have very little to say to other people? People in your life, do they tend to be more of an annoyance than a welcomed guest? So, I mean, did you answer a yes on any of those? Is it possible that your peace is under attack? Is it possible that your sense of confidence, of tranquility, of faith is being bombarded by the pressures of life and the world around you. Well, the good news is that God is concerned about your peace, and He is ready to do something to help you with it. He is ready to help bring that peace into your life. He is ready to help you live with a sense, a greater sense of that calm and peace. In 1 Peter 1:2, it says that in Jesus Christ, and Peter is kind of praying this here in a greeting, and he says, may grace and peace be yours in the fullest measure. Wouldn't that be nice? That the grace and the peace of the Lord was so heavy and so strong, it could come upon you in the fullest measure, that no matter what you faced, you could still have the peace of God. If you're feeling stress, if you're feeling pressure, if you're struggling to find joy in the day-to-day workings of your life, if you're sensing that lack of energy, or that life is no longer filled with friends and family and God that you want to be near to, if you feel like you're living with a short fuse, often agitated and angry, like you're fighting your way every step through life, God has peace for you. In fact, we're going to read a portion of Scripture this morning where Jesus promised His disciples that He will give them peace, joy, and faith. Now, just like identity can be a bit elusive, God says He gives us identity. We don't earn it. He gives it to us. The same thing is going to be true here. God gives us peace. He wants to give us joy. He wants to give us faith that are irrespective of our circumstances. But merely when we learn to trust in Him, He gives it to us. And that's so needed today. We have a sense that our world is in chaos. I don't know how you tested, but we don't have to look very far, and it's easy to feel overwhelmed. It's easy to feel like everything's out of control. It's easy to feel like our world is full of disorder and chaos. We can feel lost. We see the devastation of huge storms, even this week, across our country. The erupting of violence due to racial, religious, or political divide. We experience the calamity of troubled relationships, tension in the workplace. There are neighbors that don't get along. There are marriages that are in trouble. There are children that are unruly. There are attitudes that are crass. There are overcrowding in the streets and the marketplace. There's violence all over the television. We have wars. We have rumors of wars, sickness, pain, and disease, finances that don't stretch far enough, the uncertainty about our future and where this is all going, on and on and on it goes. And we think, because we're experiencing it now, we think that this is a new thing. We think that the world is in a new state of disorder and chaos. But what we recognize is that this is our time. This is where we live. This is what's going in our world. And so what we need is the peace of Jesus Christ today. And He wants to give you His peace today. In fact, I'll set this up a little bit early. At the end of the service, the sermon here, I don't know that I'm on track yet, but maybe we can get caught up. We want to save a few minutes at the end. And the worship team is going to come back up and share a song. And before we leave, we want to let God pour His peace over us. That if any of this is ringing in your heart and in your ears, that you need the peace of the Lord because of the way you feel or what you're experiencing or what you're thinking about in the world around us and around you, that you would let God pour His peace over you today. Jesus knew that His disciples would soon be lost as He was about to be arrested and crucified. He knew that they were following Him as they should, but He was about to be taken away. And they were going to be confused and disoriented. They were going to feel afraid that they couldn't continue the job that He'd given them to do. And He wanted to comfort them, in John chapter 14. He wanted to share with them his peace and his joy and his faith, so that when this troublesome time came, it would begin to help them how to stand in the midst of the trials that were ahead. And he shares with them some teaching, and then at the end of John chapter 14, he wants to kind of leave a blessing upon them, if you will. So if you are opening your Bibles, we're going to be at John chapter 14, verses starting with verse 25. And we'll look at what Jesus had to say to them, knowing that they were about to go through this difficult time. Their whole life was now oriented around following Jesus, and he was going to be taken. And so this is what he says to them. These things I have spoken to you while I am still with you. But the Helper, the Holy Spirit, whom the Father will send in my name, he will teach you all things and bring to your remembrance all that I have said to you. Peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you. There's the peace that he wants for them. Not as the world gives, do I give to you. Let not your hearts be troubled, neither let them be afraid. You heard me say to you, I am going away, and I will come to you. If you loved me, you would have rejoiced. There's the joy. He wants them to have joy, because I am going to the Father, for the Father is greater than I am. And now I have told you before it takes place, so that when it does take place, you may believe. He didn't want them to be lost. He wanted them to have faith. He wants for them peace, joy, and faith. I will no longer talk much with you, for the ruler of this world is coming. He has no claim on me, but I do as the Father has commanded me, so that the world may know that I love the Father. Let's rise, let us go from here. From there, they get up and they go out and pray in the Garden of Gethsemane before Jesus is arrested. And this is literally hours before what he knew was going to happen began to happen. And he wants for them this peace, this joy, and this faith. Though they're all connected together, we're going to focus on the idea of peace, but find for yourself the threads that move between them all. Find how they are connected, and if you can have God's peace come upon you, that it can help you in your joy. And as you experience God's joy and you've seen him be good to you, it would remind you that you can hang on to him and keep your faith when you face difficult times. But it's interesting that Jesus is offering his peace to this group of disciples, and that he knew that they would need it. He is giving to them his peace. God gives to us his peace. This isn't our peace. This isn't how we find peace. We try to find peace by watching television at night, reading a good book, spending time on our favorite hobby, hanging out with friends, playing games. We had a good time at Bunko last night. For everybody that was able to come, it was really fun. We do things in our life to bring joy and to bring peace, to have escape, to have downtime. Maybe you have a quiet place you like to go. Maybe there's an activity you like to walk in the woods, or ride your motorcycle, or go fishing, or there's a craft that just kind of gives you a place and a way to quiet your mind, or to be by yourself. And those are all good. Those are necessary things that we need to do. But they are a little bit different, because they give that peace in the moment. They give us that break. But then so quickly the world comes back upon us. And so Jesus says, I give you my peace. And we need to recognize that his peace is different. Because Jesus' peace was the peace that was upon him when he was sleeping in the boat during that gale-force storm on the Sea of Galilee. His peace was a peace that was upon him when the entire household was wailing and crying because a young boy had died. And Jesus quietly walks through the room to bring him back. This is Jesus' peace that was upon him every time those Pharisees came and they tried to trick him and they were scheming and they were devising against him to trap him in something and take away his following and destroy what he was doing. This is the kind of peace that Jesus was upon Jesus, even when he was facing the horrors and the torture of death on a cross, because that's what's in his mind. He's doing this because that's where he's going. That's what's next. That's what's happening. And yet he has peace to share with his disciples. That's such good news that Jesus has peace to give, and that is the kind of peace that we should want. That's the kind of peace that he offers. Jesus says, peace I leave with you. My peace I give to you. And to his soon-to-be lost and frightened band of followers, he was telling them, but my peace can be upon you. Would you like to have that peace of Jesus? Isn't it amazing how he reacted with peace to something that otherwise should have been rather crushing circumstances? I mean, think about it. If this were you and I, would our thoughts be on our concern for the disciples? Or would it not be understandable to think we were a little overwhelmed of thinking about what we were about to go through? Jesus knew that he was merely hours away from being arrested, and the trial, and then there would be the beatings, and the crown of thorns, and the walk to Galilee, and then the nails in the hands and feet that hung him on a cross. Jesus knew where he was going, and we do see him in the garden praying and concerned over that, and he knew that he needed the Lord to just prepare him for what was to come. But here in this hour, Jesus knew what was coming, but his concern was for his disciples, because he knew they would have a trouble with this. They would have a problem. It would be hard for them. And so he's worried about them. He was at peace, even knowing what he was facing. And so his eyes and his attention and thought were still upon preparing the disciples. He knew what was coming. He knew that Judas would betray him. He knew that he would be beaten and nailed to that cross, and that this was all beginning to happen. He was at the beginning hour of the walk towards Calvary, and yet his thoughts were on the disciples. Isn't that amazing? He was worried about their welfare. He was worried about how they would handle it, how they would feel. He was worried that they'd get afraid. He was worried that they would be lost. You know, if I was about to die, I think I'd be a little more worried about me. I'm kind of shallow that way. I mean, if we were sitting in the jail cell and the cross was right outside the window, you think he'd sleep very well that night? But Jesus says, I have peace, and I give it to you. I give it to you. All you have to do is receive it. And so we recognize, how do we get Jesus' peace? Well, if he has it to give it to us, then we simply need to go to him and receive it. This happened to me just yesterday, and it's happened several times as I'm just maybe talking with somebody, doing some type of just talking about their life and what's going on, and sense that they're just overwhelmed by their circumstance. And I'll ask, can I just pray for you and ask that God's peace would come over you? And though those times and prayers are often filled with tears, and it doesn't mean that circumstances have been changed. So many times I've just watched their countenance begin to calm. A sense that God is with them begins to grow. And the peace of the Lord comes down, and it fills those that want to have his peace. And I know for myself, there were times when I've been going through a difficult situation. I was maybe frustrated. I was discouraged. I was stressed out, even just angry about a situation. And I mean, I can think of specific things where I knew I was heading into a meeting, or I knew I was heading into a gathering. I knew I was heading into a situation, and my anxiety was just growing, and I'm obsessing about how I feel about it. And there have been times when I just thought, I don't want this. I don't want to feel this way. I don't want to think this way. I don't want to act this way. And I need God's peace. And so I've knelt down in my office. I've even come to the sanctuary and knelt on this altar, and I've just set myself before the Lord and said, God, I'm going to stay here until I know your peace has come back upon me. And when I sense that I'm ready to deal with it, and I spend some time there and I ask for God's help, I ask for God's forgiveness, because a lot of times it's my attitude, it's my stuff that I'm dealing with. I'm asking him to help me. I'm praying for his will. I'm praying for his peace. I'm praying for his guidance. I might sing. I might read his word. And then I will just sit in his presence until he takes my anger, or takes my worry, or takes my fears, and cast them away. And peace is what remains. And I don't know what you're going through. I know oftentimes I'll feel that way, and I can maybe achieve that place of peace. But I know that I need to go to that place of peace every day, because there's things that threaten that peace every day. And so if you have any of that going on in your life, is anything medical or financial, anything going on that is bringing about stress, or maybe even caused by your tension? Is there anything that you're dealing with, any relationship, any situation, any uncertainty about your future? Is anything changed or about to change in your life that you need God's peace to rest upon you? And so, as I said, the team's going to just lead us in a song, and I think that, like before, if you just know you need God's peace, we're going to gather up front, and we'll pray together and ask that his peace come upon us. And maybe you sense that you have a fairly strong connection with the Lord, and you feel at peace right now. You know that life is in his hands. Then just please pray for others that might gather. But if you have a sense that there's something in your life, there's changes, there's difficulty, you're struggling, or you know things are coming, or you just know you need God's peace, then at the end of this next song, we'll gather and we'll pray.